Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Welcome to another episode of Mic Unplugged, where we have sort of these like special edition, off-brand, different topics, I guess is the best way to describe it, than the usual podcast that we do. Today, we've got a really great topic. We've got a really great guest. We've got two great guests, actually. A member from the team and someone who's actually been on one of our previous podcasts. But I'm going to hand over to them. You may remember the first person, so our guest speaker for today. Runs an amazing business. He's doing amazing work. He's been in a lot of our videos, funnily enough, because he was at the entrepreneur event. He's going to be at the ventricle video when it comes out. But yeah, Sean, could we first off know how you're doing? A brief intro about you and what you've been up to since we last spoke.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that intro. What have I been? My name is Sean. Sorry, the introduction. You said what to do, and then I immediately forgot. My name is Sean Hayes. My company is More Connection Co. I make boxes that allow people to make eye contact on video call and actually feel like they're looking each other in the eyes on video call, and you know we found that makes people feel or helps people feel more connected and. We're doing great work. I mean, I might work with a therapist. I'm meeting with a therapist tomorrow to demo it with her to try and integrate that into her mental health practice with her patients. And I'm really excited about. I'm excited to be here and talk about comedy. You know that's as well. You know?
Because if you haven't watched the episode, do check it out. We did end the episode with a bit of a intro into this one, all about comedy, comedians, our favorite comedians, which is what this whole episode is about. But I also got to talk about our other guest. You may have seen him on the Two Maces podcast. If you've been here from season 1 of the Student Guide, you may have remembered we had one of our episodes with him. Josh, how you doing? Could people please know a bit more about you, your business as well? Because it seems that we've got 3 business owners, but instead of talking about business, we're all talking about comedy. Could you let us know about, one, the podcast that you're on, but also your business as well?
Hey Jeff, maybe it's the sign of the times that 3 business owners are talking about comedy instead of business. So I'm a part of the Two Maesters with my co-host Morgan, talking about sci-fi and fantasy. Started off with Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, but now branching off. We did an episode about Shogun, which will be coming out soon. An episode about Dune Part 2 is doing really well, so thank you to all the fans. And business-wise, I'm a co-owner and co-founder of EBI Records, an independent record label set in Camden that focuses on the artist.
Perfect, thank you. We're going to dive straight into it because, all the business stuff.
Get that out of here. We already did that. It's the end of the day.
Get that out of here. Yeah. Instead, I've even got sound effects here. I need to find the right one. Wait. We're gonna stop the record there, and then we're gonna go on to talking about the main reason why we're all here, which is obviously comedy. So, as I alluded to before, our previous episode with Sean was all about his business, but then we started speaking about comedians and our favorite comedians, why we love comedy, things like that. So this episode is all about that. What comedy is to the 3 of us, our favorite comedians, how we feel about, I think very topical is this idea of, comedians is comedy the same that it used to be, and can it? Because, there's always that question of you have, pretty high comedians, like for example, one off the top of my head, Eddie Murphy, that people are saying like, oh, some of the jokes that he made during his his early part of his career, he probably wouldn't be able to make now, and it to not be like you're getting cancelled. So we're going to dive into all of that. But first off, we're going to start off with why we like comedy. So I'm going to hand over to Sean for this one first, and then Josh, you're more than welcome to answer after him. But why are you Sean, why do you like comedy? Why is comedy your thing?
Comedy, I love, comedy is life. Like, comedy is really, like, I listen to comedy, some sort of comedy probably every day. Like, I just love having that type of a perspective on, like, hearing somebody talk about things in a way that's funny, that is not expected. And I really, like, I think that's really necessary. Like, it's so important to laugh. Like, people don't laugh. Like, I mean, they do. I mean, like, of course everyone laughs, but I just feel you need to release that like the energy of comedy somewhere, and you need to like have a good sense of humor, and that's developed through comedy. So I really like comedy to me is crucial to like mental health, really.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
No, I completely agree. What about you, Josh?
I'd have to 100% agree with what Sean was saying. Like the fact, comedy to me is like, it's like, you know how people take like tea and coffee to like relax, to like after a stressful day to then like unwind. I think for me, it's like comedy. Like whether it's like going on YouTube, watching like The Daily Show, or just watching like clips of SNL or some stuff like Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr. It's just like, it's just the laughing element of it kind of relax you. And like I read a study, they said that students now doing their A-levels have the same amount of stress as like journalists in the 40s. And I was like, wow.
Really?
Yeah, because the way that the exams are set, and also the push from society that, oh, you must do exams, you must go to uni, you must graduate, you then must get a job. Oh, and also if you're not married yet, you then must be married by this point in time. That there is a lot of stress. Yeah. And I think like one thing I love about comedy is that it gives you time to then get your mind away from like everything that's happening. So you have it with video games and TV show, but there's just something that comedy does that it just like for me, like I can be playing a video game but think about, oh yeah, I have to do this tomorrow at work. But when I'm watching a good comedy, I'm fully focused on that comedy and nothing can like take me away from that.
100%. And even, funny that you mentioned that, because I think there was this like fact website, and it was basically saying like, hey, if you're going for a long drive, you're feeling kind of tired, or maybe you've got like a late submission you need to do, perfect thing to watch. They said, don't listen to like music because it might tire you out, it might distract you. Best thing to watch, comedy sketch, because they said, especially if you're going for like a long drive across the like, whether it's across the country or maybe you're going like a long drive across like, I don't know, different states in America. Like they said, it's really good because you don't feel tired when you're like laughing, you're having a good time. Even they said like when you're working through things, like you'll, maybe background noise at work, if you're listening to something funny, you'll still be like a passive listener, but it won't be so distracting that you'll be like, oh, like I have to watch this. You can just play it in the background and just hear what you're listening to and things like that.
Also, I think it makes you funnier.
Like
when you're listening to comedy a lot, like I notice like if I'm listening to a lot of a certain comedian, like somehow their mannerisms make their way into my day. Like And that can be good or bad, like depending on the comedian, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think to transition it next, and we'll start with you, Joshua. Good place to start is favorite comedians. Now, I'm gonna that's a good place to start. So I'll ask the hardest question. I think with this, it'll be good to include, so rather than to separate and be like, oh, what's your favorite comedian from like late 90s, early 2000s, and then what's your favorite comedians now? Just like, if you can name one, fine. If you want to do a top three, also fine. But like top three comedians to date. So like any comedians, and then Sean, I'll ask you the same thing, and I'll also say mine too. Yeah.
I might answer it just a little bit differently. I think for me, it's like, to your point, you have to then like graduate with comedy. Like one thing, especially like younger, watching like Mr. Bean, you could say that was a form like of comedy that you then start to pick up. And then I remember like watching stuff with like QI on which is still running on BBC Two, watching stuff like Mock the Week, that then kind of got me more into comedy with Frankie Boyle on the show as well, and others on the show as well, Dara O'Brien, another funny comedian. And then I think one thing that YouTube, I think, is really excellent for is then I found like Def Comedy Jam. And then I was able to then see like the early stand-ups of like Chris Tucker, Chris Rock, Bernie Mac. So I think then that kind of opened me up to like full-on comedy. So then being able to find comedians like Bill Burr, being able to then see comedians on that I think
fucking love Bill Burr.
Go across the line, can then go either side of it, but then you're like, that guy actually makes a point. Actually, what he's saying makes a point. So I'd have to say, like, at this point in time, my favorite would be Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, And then I would say Jon Stewart. Because the way that he cuts the important information, breaks it down, and then makes people laugh about it. And like I remember I started watching The Daily Show when he was in charge of it, and then Trevor Noah did a really, really, really good job. But I think just because Jon Stewart is a more seasoned comedian, he was able to then come back, and then just like watching some of the, especially on YouTube, some of the sketches that he comes up with is hilarious.
He's so next level, dude. He's insane, dude. It's yeah.
Oh, perfect. Sean, over to you.
Dude, I just got excited about those three comedians. I mean, because like you're like, I mean, you must have seen like, you know, the most recent. There's like a thing of Jon Stewart, and I'll answer, but I have to say like, you know, like Jon Stewart did a thing, like, you know, he's back like on the Daily Show, right? And then like he, you know, pissed off both parties. Like both parties don't like him now. Because which is normally like the Democrats are always like, yeah, like we love Jon Stewart, you know, because he's awesome. But you know, the Republicans are usually the people that hate him, or the people that they're like, you know, he makes a good point, but like I don't like that. So like, but he pissed off both parties because he was just like, look, man, this is who you like, this is who we have, like these two people, like, you know. Anyway, I don't want to go too much into that, but it was funny that he pissed off both sides. Favorite comedians? Oh, it's such a hard question. I think, you know, honestly, I've been listening to a lot of Tiger Belly, if you know that podcast with Bobby Lee, and Bad Friends with Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino. And Bobby Lee is just such a ridiculous person that he's got to be up there. Even though he doesn't have a special out. He's like, it's been a thing for him. Like he's never released a special. Like I think is just recording one, like it's just been recorded, or it's something like it will be coming out, but he's just such a ridiculous person that I laugh every time I listen to him. And then I'd say probably got to be Chappelle. Chappelle's got to be in there. I mean, I'm not if it's top three comedians, Chappelle's got to be in there. And then I don't know, really. Third. It's tough, man. I mean, I could say Bill Burr as well, but Bill Burr is fantastic. I love Bill Burr. I'll go with Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. Yeah, he's unreal. Yeah, he's also amazing. So I'd say that.
And I think the key thing that he's able to do, that I think him, Jon Stewart, and also Dave Chappelle can do, is that they're able to accentuate their accents to therefore make they could say any line and make it sound funny based on their accents. Because I remember listening to Bill Burr, and he was talking about his life when I think he was just on a podcast, and he was just like telling jokes about like his life when he used to grow up in like the New England area where he's from, and just the way he'd say things would just have everyone cracking up laughing.
Yeah. He's just like constantly the curmudgeon. Like he's constantly this like upset guy, like about something. And it's so entertaining.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely agree.
What are yours? What are your three top three comedians?
It's a tough one. I think I'm gonna go for different ones to you guys, just so we don't. But I think definitely like within my, I guess on my Mount Rushmore, it's definitely Chappelle. I just feel like, because there was even one time, like my brother showed me, where he basically said, I'm gonna end the joke, and then like just said, this is how I'm gonna end the joke. I'm telling you guys in advance. And then like the way, and it was just funny because like I've never seen a comedian be like, yeah, this is gonna be the punchline, and then they go on a whole spiel, and you're just like, okay, but where's this punchline coming? Where's the punchline? I don't get it. And then out of nowhere, you're just like, he says it, and you're just like, that's the punchline. And you're just like, wow. The fact that you like looped it back in like really well.
And it's still funny.
And it's still
told
funny.
You.
Exactly.
Master.
So that's why I'm just like, Chappelle's definitely got to be up there. I think top three, I think because I grew up with him on The Daily Show, Trevor Noah definitely has to be there for me, because I feel like Trevor Noah, I don't know, there's just the way that he says things is very funny. So not only within the sense of like when he was on the Daily Show, like he was giving all this information, but he was then making jokes. But I think also like the fact that like he was on Kevin Hart's comedian podcast, and we will get into like comedy podcasts as well and mention those. We might actually do it next.
Yes, dude.
So if you're looking for any recommendations, well, we got you covered. But yeah, what was really funny on that was so Kevin Hart asked him like, oh, what time do you wake up? And he was just like, what's a typical day for Trevor Noah? And this was when he was on the Daily Show, and he was like, I usually wake up around like maybe like 8. I think it was like 8 or 9. And then Kevin Hart was just like, unbelievable. He's just like, unbelievable. And then Trevor Noah was just like, you're one of those like early morning tyrants that's just like, oh yeah, I start my day at like 6 and then I go for like a 5K run. And he's just like, people like you disgust me. And he's just like, look, just because you believe that like when the sun's up, you got to be awake doesn't mean that the rest. And I was just like, the way he made a joke about it, I was just like, this is pretty funny. I think another one, which was one actually I've never watched. Like, I've seen clips of his specials, but I've never actually watched his special, is Gabriel Iglesias.
Oh, yeah.
Fluffy.
Yeah, Fluffy. Because he's just funny. And he's got, like, this really funny clip. And I think especially as a, like, comic book fan, he has a clip where he was talking about his nephew or his cousin. Yeah, I think it was his nephew. Like, at a party, this child was just like to him, like, oh, Batman's the best superhero. Like, you're wearing an Avengers top. And the way he just, like, berated this child in, like, a comedic way to just be like, hey, look, like, no, Batman's actually a creep. And it was just like very funny. So yeah, I think Fluffy's got to be number 2 on my list. And then number 3, I think, I'm trying to think of any other, you know what? Number 3, UK comedian, who I've never seen live, but I've seen his sketches online, always makes me laugh, Nathan Cathan. Cause yeah, like his clips are very, honestly, like his comedies, I don't even remember this. It's been ages. Like, I think he did a live at the Apollo ages ago, but like his jokes are very funny. And I think, and this is again something we're going to talk about, I think there are some comedians, like I'm not saying this is the case for Nathan Cathan, but there are some comedians where I feel like they're very much, and they know it, they're localized. So their jokes can't translate to another audience, which is perfectly fine. Like that, no, that's not me saying you're a bad comedian if you can't. But I feel like, particularly like growing up in the UK, a lot of the jokes he was saying, like you found really funny, especially if you grew up in the UK, because you would be like, yeah, I completely relate to what you're saying. So yeah, it was very. So yeah, I think Nathan Cathan is just funny because like he gets the UK humor that he portrays is like really good. But yeah, those would be my like top 3. But yeah, I think actually.
We do honorable mentions.
Let's do honorable mentions.
Okay, there's a lot. Like,
there is a lot.
Like top 3 is too. Like top 3 is like I've gotta like that is hard, man. Like I've gotta like cut out like so many. Like I don't know, but I wrote down Nathan Cathan. I need to check out Nathan.
Definitely recommend. But yeah, I think let's do honorable mentions and then we'll go into the podcast one of our favorite comedy podcasts.
I would say I think mostly the sad thing for me is like Robin Williams. After he passed away, because a lot of like his major jokes were like before we were even like born. It's like the jokes in the 80s and like in the 70s as well. And like some of the jokes, I think one of his last stand-ups when he was doing like making fun of like George Bush just before like Obama came into power was like one of the funniest things ever. And like the fact that his dark humor, like my sister was just telling me a joke that he said that when he was in Germany, they were basically saying, oh, he said maybe the reason why Germans aren't funny is because they killed all the ones that were funny. And then people in the crowd were just laughing and in tears, and then I was like, damn, I'm like, wow,
dude, fucking.
But also, when you mentioned Robin Williams, I think they said it in like video, like a documentary they did about him for Aladdin. Yeah. A lot of his clips in Aladdin.
Oh, because he was Genie, right?
He was the Genie. Yeah. So the intro bit for the Genie apparently was a lot longer, and they had to like cut it down because basically like, he was making them laugh too much. Like he was just doing all, and then I think there was some bits where he basically was like improvising it. So there was one part where he literally was like,
brilliant improviser. Yeah,
he is amazing. Even the he plays the person that Aladdin steals the apple from at the beginning, the merchant that's trying to sell stuff, he actually plays the merchant. And apparently he had so all the stuff he's talking about, they literally just gave him a box and said like, we're going to record you, whatever's in the box, we want you to try and sell. And he was just like, okay, cool. And then, so all the lines that were recorded for like the merchant trying to sell stuff, improvised just based on like what he opened this box and then found.
He's so brilliant.
And I was just like, how many people can just like, you can just be like, hey, look, we're not going to give you any context, no lines, just go in there, improvise this and do it. And and I think linking it to the wider set of like comedy, that's the thing with like, I do like about comedy is there are a lot of like films and TV shows that the stuff that the audience really love is stuff that is just improvised. And people are just like, afterwards, people are just like, how did you think of this? How did you? And they're just like, oh, it just came to me on the spot. The camera was rolling. And
like one thing that people have said is like, there are like two genres that can get into acting and that they have like a huge high success rate. And they've said it's rappers who write their own lyrics. So whether you've got like Ice Cube, you've got Common, T.I.'s now into it. You've got like Mos Def, he's gone into acting as well. Ice-T, who's in other acting as well. And they said comedians. Like if you just look into like how many comedians have gone in, Robin Williams has won an Oscar, Whoopi Goldberg's won an Oscar. You've got so many great comedians who've gone into acting and have excelled there. And I think to your point, it's like the improvisation and they know how to get a reaction out of an audience because of the stand-up. They know what people like and what people don't like, and then are able to then work that into the characters they create.
And they know how they're funny.
Yeah.
Like they know how like they're particularly funny because they're constantly testing that. And so it's so when you're around a comedian who's like killing it, it's always great.
It is. Yeah.
And I have to say honorable mentions. Tom Segura's in there. Joe Rogan's in there because I like him. His comedy's all right, but I like him as a person more than his comedy, to be honest. But he's also really funny. Bo Burnham is in there. Eddie Murphy's in there.
Definitely, yeah. I'd also add two for me, actually three: Chris Tucker, Chris Rock, and Bernie Mac.
Yeah. R.I.P.
I think for me, honorable mentions would be who would it even be? You know what? I don't, because I think again this is another point we'll talk about because I think there are some people that their sketches might not be the funniest, but they are very comic actors. So like Kevin Hart, I think is very like I'm not saying he's special.
He's got good stand up though.
He's got a really good stand up, but I think like I love his like the way he just acts sometimes, especially in like acting stuff. Like even like my brother knows there was they showed it on BET. There was the Real Husbands of Hollywood, which was like a spin-off spoof of like Real Housewives.
With Kevin Hart.
So it had Kevin Hart, Nick Cannon,
it had the
Dwayne
rapper
Martin,
Dwayne Martin,
Boris Kojo, and it was just like really
Phase on Love, JB Smoove as well was on it. Yeah,
actually not. Shout out to JB Smoove.
JB Smoove is funny, especially like in the Spider-Man films, like the way he's able to then play. And I think he even said like for him it's improvised as well. And I think in like the reason I picked like Chris Tucker, like they said for Rush Hour, the first film, like majority of his lines were improvised, and like even for Friday, for the movie Friday, his lines were also improvised, and I was like, damn, like as you said, he knew what was funny and he knew what he could make funny and make people laugh.
Because it's funny, like when you see the like outtakes, and I think that's something that needs to come back. This is not to do with comedy in general, but films in general, is like when because I think the reason why Rush Hour, and again we'll go into comedy films as well as podcasts and all that stuff later, but I think the reason why the Rush Hour trilogy is one of my favorite films ever is because, like I told my brother, Rush Hour is a film that I can watch and I will still like I can laugh as much as I did the first time I ever watched it. And it's just like the improvisation. Even like I was telling my brother, it was funny because what happened when Chris Tucker's character and Jackie Chan's character actually meet is kind of what happened in real life, because Jackie Chan was saying like when Chris Tucker was speaking, he was speaking so fast that Jackie Chan was just like, I don't know, like I don't know what he's saying. Like
Hilarious.
he's just going like, and he was just like, I genuinely don't know what he's saying. But I think like that whole that interaction is what makes their like relationship as characters really funny. And it's just like, that's why I said like Rush Hour, personally, I love it. It's just like how ridiculous I think it's funny because there are films now which are action films, but you'll be like for example, big obvious answer, Fast and Furious. The plot, sometimes hard to believe.
It's Rush Hour. All Rush Hour beats that for me.
But
Rush Hour.
Exactly.
And I like Fast and Furious, but Rush Hour it's got everything though.
Exactly.
It's got Jackie Chan stunts.
And it's just like balances the, because I think I was telling Josh about it, like Rush Hour, if you take all the way the comedy element, Rush Hour is like, the tone of the film can switch, but it's not in a way that it's like, oh, it's like hardly believable. It's like, no, this could be like a serious like thriller action film. But then if you like take away the comedy, like if you take away the serious elements, put the comedy, the film would still work as well as it did.
Yeah.
And it just balances it really well. But yeah, we've talking about ages. Let's talk about it. Comedy podcast. Any recommendations for the listeners and viewers out there that we've got? Because I've got a few, and I'm guessing you guys have got a few too. Sean, we'll start with you.
So many, Tiger Belly and Bad Friends. Anything with Bobby Lee is hilarious. There's Tom Segura's podcasts. Your Mom's House podcast with his wife Christina Pajitsky. It's just nonsense, is what it is, but it's hilarious. I love it. I mean, yeah, that's all I can think of right now. Okay. But there's a lot, but I'll jump in if I can think of any. But
for me, I think for me, podcasts is mostly because we usually watch stuff for like sports podcasts. But I'd say Jeffrey put me on like Kevin Hart's podcast and also Trevor Noah's. And like there's a clip that's gone viral is of him talking to like Don Cheadle, and Don Cheadle says his age, and Kevin Hart's like, damn. And then Don Cheadle just looks at him like, seriously. And I just think like the way that Kevin's able to then talk to his guests, he's always able to like bring the comedy out of it. And I think also like Joe Rogan's podcast, when he gets a very good comedian on it, like every time he brings on like Bill Burr onto his podcast, it is laughs and gaffes throughout the whole time, because it's like they've known each other for so long. And even like when he brought on like Dave Chappelle, when Dave Chappelle went on, because they even had like a special on the Chappelle show, like Fear Factor. and they were talking about it, so I ended up watching it. It is very, very hilarious. So if you should really take a look at it. It's hilarious. And then just hear them talk about stories and then just laughing about it, and then things that they've gone through in the industry, and then it's just hilarious.
They've been in the trenches together. When neither were famous, just grinding, doing open mics, you really 100%. I feel like there's like that community of comedians where like all the comedians kind of stick together and get like, I feel like like cancel culture, like you rarely hear a comedian canceling another comedian because
100%.
They understand that you're saying anything to make the audience laugh, and that's what you're trying to do, and that's like the philosophy that they will live by. And it's like, if that's what you're going for, then it's all a joke. Like you're at a comedy club. Like the context is important, and I don't know, like I think there's really real community 100%. In that. Like and it's really great to like come across two people that you never knew, like they have been knowing each other, and late nights in New York City, like trying to make it for years. It's incredible to listen to.
Yeah. And just quickly, for honorable mention, also the Wine Brothers, especially for like Living Color. I've just been able to watch clips online from it because it was before my time. And then also you've got
Jamie
the film
Foxx.
Jamie Foxx as well, and I think Martin Lawrence as well, like his beginning of his career, and also R.I.P. like Charlie Murphy as well, Eddie Murphy's brother, like him being on the Chappelle show put him on the map of, it's not just Eddie Murphy's brother, he's actually a very, very good comedian who I'd also put out there, like just on the British side, also like on the satire comedy, like Ricky Gervais. Like
yeah.
his sarcasm, especially you really see it like in whether if it's in like The Office UK or in Extras, and I think that's like a part of comedy is like. So I think like with comedians, the specialness of being able to get to a stage is so good that they can actually then write shows, and then that's what you see with like Ricky Gervais, and also I keep forgetting his partner, the person who's also in The Office as well. That they both co-writ The Office, they both co-writ as well the Extras. And then also just to shout out Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, like for Hot Fuzz, and then also Shaun of the Dead, because like I can watch Hot Fuzz like over and over and over again. And the gaffes always make me laugh.
I think for me, podcast wise, as you mentioned, Kevin Hart's Comedy Goldmines podcast, where he like interviews comedians and like talks with them, but it's also like a bit of a comedy special because they're both making jokes. I think one that you put me on was Evil Genius. So it's on BBC Sounds if you want to check it out. I think it's also on Spotify as well. But it's essentially comedians come and they talk about either a fictional character or a real person, and then they'll say whether this person was evil or if they were a genius. So to me, especially if you want to hear Nathan Cathan, I would say the best one to check out is the Adi Dassler one, where he talks about the history of Adidas and how Adidas started and its links to the Nazi Party. And so they bring in like that history element, but then they also, because they're all like comedians, they also like put their own like spin and there's jokes. And it's talking about like, oh, well, was based on what the information cards that they have, was this person truly evil or were they like a genius? When it comes to the fictional characters, that's where it gets a bit complicated, because with certain people, you're just like, so like, for example, they spoke about Darth Vader, and they had, I think it was Ramesh Ranganathan on there.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, and he was hilarious in it. And he's like, I think he's a Star Wars fan. So he was just saying he was saying like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to put him as a genius. Like, he said Darth Vader is literally, like, he is pure evil.
Yeah,
like,
definition of evil.
He's the definition of evil.
How are you arguing?
Just watch Revenge of the Sith and the killing of the young.
So he was just like, why would I consider him to be, like, why would I consider him a genius? Like, he is pure evil. When they talk about, like, historical people, like, they did, like, Adi Dassler, they spoke about Richard Nixon.
Boudicca as well.
They've spoken about JFK. They spoke about.
I think they did one on Mother Teresa as well.
Yeah. So they do on like loads of like historical figures and just.
Who's arguing Mother Teresa?
Yeah,
evil?
I haven't listened to it, but
who has to take that side?
But yeah, it's really
That's
interesting.
a tough argument to
it
make.
really is. It really is.
Probably a funny one. Though.
Yeah, but I definitely would recommend to just it is a good podcast to like check out, and especially for historical people, like even when they talk about like Watergate for Nixon, like that was very interesting because they were saying like a lot of people use it like, oh, you know, this is just like the Watergate scandal, or you're like, this is your own version of Watergate. You know, there's what was the one with Wayne Rooney's wife?
The Wagatha Christie.
Yeah, Wagatha Christie one. Yeah, they said like there was that like loads of scandals get related to that, and they were saying
they
like
had a gate to the end of it. Yeah.
And they were saying like a lot of people use that phrase, but they don't necessarily know like what actually Watergate was about. So they talk about that, and there's a cool historical element to it, but it is generally funny because they're not historians, they're just all comedians, and they might not necessarily like. I think the most interesting one was the James Bond one, because they were just like, obviously it's still that, I don't remember what they concluded in the end, but it's all about, is he evil, is he a genius? But they were talking about like, oh yeah, what most of the James Bond girls are just like, especially earlier on, not so much, kind of still with the Daniel Craig, but like they were just like, they were very over sexualized. They were sort of like
this is James Bond.
Yeah. They were just
what they do.
Yeah, and it was just very funny because they were saying even like in what's the one.
You know what? I was weird that they got away with the title Octopussy. I was like, how could you get away with that in the 80s as a title of a film?
Dude.
But yeah, man, it's but yeah, they were saying with
breaking barriers.
They were saying with the Daniel Craig one, it's not Spectre, Skyfall, that was it.
Yeah.
The love interest in that literally just got like she gets shot. And then Daniel Craig James Bond is just so she had a drink on top of her head that they were just like, oh, they told James Bond he had to like shoot the drink, and if he missed, they were going to kill her, and if he didn't shoot, they would kill her. And he said he wasn't going to do it. They killed her anyways. The drink falls off her head, and he was just like, "Well, that was a good waste of brandy." And then someone was just like,
What a man.
What a man. Like, not going to even acknowledge that she died.
He's just not living.
like,
he's trying to, he's like, I've got to kill people.
Exactly.
That's all he's focused on, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say it's funny to just have like a group of comedians just talk about it.
It's just like, you can't even, it's like anything else, just distraction.
It's the distraction, yeah.
Just imagine him like with his therapist. So, Mr. Bond, when they shot her, what did you do? Well, I just talked about the brandy. Like, but what about the woman? What about her?
James Bond doesn't know how to talk about his feelings.
He does not.
That is not a character trait of his. Like, we're aware of.
Yeah, it's a really good. But yeah, I'd say those. Like, check out all the ones we've recommended. We'll try and put the links to all of them in the description as well. But yeah, I think one key thing, linking back to what we were saying about like comedy is, and Sean, you kind of alluded to it, is this idea of like, as comedians, and then we'll end with our like funniest, like our comedy films. Our comedy recommendations. I won't do another top 3. But yeah, I think as you mentioned, like cancel culture is definitely something that actually there's 2 bits. So the first thing, cancel culture. A lot of
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Before we ourselves get cancelled.
But yeah, I think it's important to talk about, because a lot of comedians have brought up like the fact that like, you know, they're being told like, oh, or some comedians are like, oh, like I can't be as funny as I used to be because I would be cancelled, or like old comedians, like, I don't know, certain sketches they said and things like that. I think kind of like what you mentioned, Sean, it is very, especially like someone saying like, oh, a comedy sketch from like the 80s or 90s, putting it in the context of today, you need to be aware of like, times have changed. So some things were cool to say before, some things aren't. I think it's also like what you said about like how to balance it. So I don't remember which comedian it was, but this comedian was just like, I can make a joke about a racial group that I'm not a part of, but I can do it in a way that I'm not being racist, I'm not using stereotypes.
You're talking about Russell Peters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, because he was saying like,
he knows their culture so
Yeah.
well. Like, I mean, like he like puts in like effort to do that and like make sure that, I mean, like you're saying.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Like he was saying, like, you don't need to, like, I don't know, be like, say a racial stereotype, a racial slur, or sex, like anything like that. To make it funny. Like the funny part is the audience relating to what you're saying. And like you're saying, if you're talking about a culture or an experience that you relate to, or you know your partner relates to, or your friends relate to, like stuff like that is still very funny, and like people will laugh, but you don't necessarily need to be like, oh, I don't know, like I'm not gonna say any because literally I don't want to get cancelled.
Yeah, you need to have really good taste.
Exactly.
Like, and also like to add to that, like jokes are like like a lot of jokes, it's like you're creating tension and then you're releasing that tension.
Yes,
exactly.
And the quick, like, there's almost no quicker way that I can think of to create tension other than like saying something about race. So that's why, like, that's why it's like, you know, it's such a common thing in comedy. It's like, you know, that's tension. Like, you're gonna create some tension there somehow, and then, you know, hopefully, you know, it's not your first time saying that joke, and you've tested that joke out a few times, and then you know what, it's funny, and then so then you know you can say it, you know, you can somewhat comfortably, you know, build the tension and release that tension, and you know, Russell Peters there's no one better at racial jokes I can think of at the moment. And then I must say another honorable mention is Norm Macdonald. If you guys don't know about, do you guys know about Norm Macdonald? Oh, rest in peace, Norm Macdonald. One of the funniest comedians ever, I think, in my opinion. Okay.
I'll check him out.
And I can't think of the other guy's name, but the guy who co-wrote The Chappelle Show is also Neil something.
Patrice O'Neill.
No. He's but Patrice O'Neill as well.
He's another one from Montreal, yeah. And I think the one thing I did like about Patrice O'Neill, just being able to watch it, is that he's unapologetic, but the way he says it is perfect. Like one of the jokes he was saying was that that if he was around black people who seemed a bit dangerous, he would also be scared. And that doesn't mean that a person is racist if they feel that way, because that he feels that way as well. And he said, like, the same way, if I was around a bunch of fully built skinheads, I'd also be scared. And he's like, that isn't a form of racism. That's also just being aware and being cautious. And like one thing, it was either, I think Dave Chappelle said it in like he said that comedy is like a magic trick, and that you have like the Houdinis who can basically have a death-defying magic trick where they can escape from a tank chained, but then if that's the tension. But if you're not skilled, you'd end up drowning or almost dying, and then people in terror and fright, or potentially when you do the sawing in half of the assistant, that you have to then make sure that you have practiced this magic act and you can take it from end to the beginning, and then you create the tension, and then, as you said, just release it. And I think the issue with me with like comedy is to your point, it sometimes, with the short clip age we're in now, can be taken out of context.
Oh yeah.
So if you take someone having a comedy sketch, and because one of the things that great comedians do is that they have a joke, and it's like I think they call it like a set, and they have a set within their special where they have, I'm going to focus on this topic for this part of the set, 5 minutes, and then you take 30-minute clip of a 5 minute. It's like someone said, it's like taking like, let's say 10 minutes out of Lord of the Rings and then telling someone, here you go, bam, tell me what Lord of the Rings is about. And it's like, no, you can't really take it out of context. And that's why comedians like Dave Chappelle are like, no, do not bring out your phones. Because I've practiced, and also I could use this set, and if I'm going on tour, I can go somewhere else and use it. But also, if you take a clip of what I'm saying, you then can put it in a specific way that can then make me look bad. And I think that's an issue that comedians have to deal with.
I think Chappelle had to deal with that recently.
He did,
with like some trans thing.
Yeah,
I think there was like
closer,
something about trans like in his set, and he was in his set, and he got really like there's a news story, something like that. And then also it reminded me of like, Bill Burr is so good at getting in like almost like turning the crowd against him. And then like getting them to agree with him, but he
100%.
hasn't changed his point of view, and he's still angry.
Yeah,
that's very unique. Like one of his I remember is one of his most famous ones is like he's like, you should never beat a woman. Except, he goes and then he goes on the tangent of that, and it's like, okay, dude, like, good luck with that, let's see where that goes, and it's of course hilarious, and everyone in the audience laughs, but it's like, dude, like that's some balls to do that.
Like I remember the one like he was saying that he's on stage, like people say that being a mother is the hardest job, and he's like, really, and he's just like. If someone was like, he basically said,
like questioning this thing that like,
and he was like, the people who were on the oil rig that caught fire, and he was like, do you think your job is harder than that, or the miners, the Chilean miners who were stuck underground for 2 weeks? Is your job? And I think the issue is that he's perfect. He's perfect. Is like he, as you said, creates the tension. And then gets people to see, oh, yeah, actually, he is kind of right. Because I think what he gets angry about, and you see it from like him on like podcasts, and especially with Joe Rogan, is that when we have like, oh, this is what everyone says, and this is just a common norm that we all agree to and all agree and say, oh, you mustn't do this. But then you're like, but there might be exceptions to it. And then, but people are like, oh, how dare you come up with an exception? But he's like, but we all know that there are exceptions. We all accept it, but we just don't say it.
No, 100%. And I think it is very important to mention, as you guys said, like, I think especially with the the social media short form content, like, I guess YouTube element of it, because when Trevor Noah was interviewed by Kevin Hart on his podcast, he was saying when he was getting into comedy, he was like one of the few comedians that he knew that would like post clips of his sets on YouTube for the main aim of like, actually what I'm doing is like I'm creating interest abroad because he said like, oh yeah, I can pay, like people can pay money to come and see my jokes. But he said, well, actually, if I have an international audience who watch my YouTube channel and they're engaging with my content, and even if I put up a full special, like might not be able to reuse those jokes, or they might be like, oh, he's reused this and something I've already seen. He was just like, but the reach is so much bigger. But I think as you mentioned, more so nowadays, especially because like when he was posting, short form content didn't really exist, or like not as short as like less than a minute.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna post like, and anyone can do it. As long as there's like a video of it, they can just post like 1 minute of a comedy sketch, chop it up, and then it's just like what you guys said, like if you chop up, I don't know, like 5 minutes of this conversation or even like a minute of this conversation, where you're talking about different things, people might think, oh, these guys are like being really rude or they're saying really bad things.
You know, you can't beat women if you cut that.
If you cut it there.
And that area, it's like, fuck this guy. I mean, you know, sorry. You know, like, fuck that guy. Like,
that's the truth.
Yeah,
but
100%.
that happens all the time.
Yeah,
like,
and even, I forgot to shout out, this is a podcast I've actually been like avidly listening to, Ain't Got a Clue. It's with Kay Kurd, who's a comedian, and Marcus Bronte, who's like an MC. And it's funny because like they just talk about like, I guess, stuff that goes on in their daily lives, as well as like broader stuff. So they talk about reality TV show. They talk about I don't know, like they were talking about LTN. I don't like, if you want to know the full story, you can check out their podcast. Funnily enough, so Kay, his phone number. Apparently, this school essentially contacted parents via phone numbers. Dumb chance that they get his phone number by missing one of the digits on one of the parents.
Oh no!
So they were messaging him like, "Oh, just to let you know, like we've got a school trip coming up. Everyone needs to do." And he's apparently like, I think it's fixed now, but at the time he was saying like, "Yeah, I've literally contacted the school." But I keep on getting these messages like my child has hasn't done their homework, hasn't signed their permission slip, and he was like, I don't know what they want me to do. And it was just funny because you're just like, yeah, it's very like relatable. But literally like what you were saying, they were saying, because Kay's a comedian and he posts like specials and stuff. And I guess he'd be an honorable mention as well because like in one of the episodes he was doing, he was talking about how, in one of the special story he was doing, he was saying like, everyone's just like, oh, you know, comedians and actors need to speak on like every issue. They need to, you know, if we don't hear them speak.
Yeah, it's like, no, you can't. Like,
exactly.
No one can do that. Like,
because I was telling my brother, like, there were, Elizabeth Olsen, when Chadwick Boseman passed away, a lot of Marvel actors, you know, put out messages, maybe they put out a clip saying like, you know, me and Chadwick were really close and this and that. Elizabeth Olsen, I either didn't do it immediately or didn't do it at all. And then people were coming for her saying like, oh, Elizabeth Olsen hates Chadwick Boseman. And then like, I think she had to come out with a statement and she was just like, no, it's just like really hard. Like this is like, it was really hard for me. I took a break from social media. I didn't want to talk about anything. Didn't want to do this. And then when
God forbid she's going through like a mental health issue.
Exactly. And then she really, and I think when Marvel released the special talking about like Chadwick Boseman and his life and like how with interviews from different members of the cast, like when they were on set with him, like she was talking about like her experience with him and how she really enjoyed it and all of this stuff. And I was just like, well, no wonder she was like, she didn't want to be on social media. She's like, it's a hard time for her.
She's devastated.
And I think that's what some of the greatest comedians can do is that I think Bill Burr does it the funniest is that he just doesn't care what the public says because the issue is that they're always wishy-washy. They love you 1 minute, they hate you the other, then they love you again. And it's like at times like, oh, we want you to do this. We want you to say something. Because you haven't said something, we hate you now. You then say something because you were building up to it so you could understand the whole issue. And now, like, oh, we love you. Well done. That was awesome. So that's one of the things that I think even in crossing over, like Michael Jordan doesn't really care about fans because he's like, when I play well, they clap for me. When I play badly, they boo. So really, it's really my peers, my coaches, and my family. And I think it's the same thing with comedians. Like they care about how their peers see them, they care about how their family sees them, and also the people who have worked with them to then get where they are. Because if you then get obsessed, and I think that's some of the younger comedians have said that's their issue they're starting now, especially the ones who've used like YouTube and TikTok and social media.
It's like
having like
difficulty dealing with public perception.
Yeah, because like they've come up not from like comedy clubs or tours or television shows. They've had to use like social media to then build their platform, have shorts on YouTube, have reels on Instagram that have built up their following. And then now they're like, okay, then now people are off me now and don't really like me as they used to. What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to then get them back to then see me?
Yeah. And I think adding on to that, like that's what people are saying, not necessarily to do with like comedians, but with this whole idea of like, every YouTuber sounds harsh, but like all these YouTubers that are just like, oh yeah, I'm a prankster, or I go to like Starbucks and I don't know, like do some stuff, or like I go on the road and I like pretend to do stuff. Like I think one of the ones that generally, like I think even I was telling my brother, like so many of these guys do this stuff, and I'm just like, what you're doing is generally dangerous. So like one guy, he basically like will run up to people, maybe like if they've got something in, like a phone in their hand or whatever in their hand, he'll like smack it out of their hand. Then he runs around a corner and then he'll just like rip off whatever he was wearing and pretend that he was like someone else. And then when the people will like obviously see him come around the corner, they might be like, oh, like we know it was you because like we can see the clothes on the floor. Like, oh, did you see this person? And then like they do it as a joke and all this stuff. And I'm just like,
it's just content for content's sake.
Exactly.
It's not like for... Like, it's not really entertaining. It's like, you know, we know that you're scrolling on our app and here's something else that is going to keep you on it. It's not like, you know, like Dave Chappelle has crafted this act for you. Yeah, that's going to make you laugh. And he actually knows probably when that's going to be exactly. Happen. And it's like, yeah, it's a different thing.
100%. And it's just like and like someone was even saying like, even those types of pranks are just overcomplicated. They were just like, where's the stuff like Punk'd, where it was just like very small, like it wasn't necessarily extravagant.
Yeah. You know, they actually had comedians writing some of those. Like there's like Andrew Santino, I forget, he was like talking about it on Bad Friends podcast of like some Punk'd episode that he like wrote like the prank and was also like participating in, so it was like very. I liked Punk'd. Punk'd was good.
Yeah,
it really was.
Didn't watch that much of it, but it was good.
Yeah, and like comedy shows like that, like there was one that it's like kind of ridiculous, but there was one where they basically like so they had like a public store, like a like the ones they have on construction sites. So people would go in, and then when someone would go in, they basically like moved this like fake office to basically like, and a hallway to like block the door. So when people would like exit the toilet, they would see like loads of guys on like as if it was a business meeting, and it was just funny because they would just like walk out the toilet, see all these.
Wait,
people.
is it? I think I've seen this one.
Yeah.
Is it like a porta potty? Yeah, I've seen this.
And they'd just walk in and they'd be like, what's going on? And then it was funny because they generally would think like, oh yeah, I must have like gone in the wrong way. Let me go back inside and check. And then some of them would just like shut the door, open it again, and be like, I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
no one gets hurt.
No one gets hurt.
Gets
it's not
damaged.
complicated. Nothing gets damaged. And I'm just like, that's
all good vibes.
That's all good vibes, and it's really funny. Even like there was another one. I'm trying to remember. Like loads of stuff like that is just really funny because it's not like extravagant. Oh yeah, there was one that they do, like currently they do. It's this like group of friends and they all play musical instruments. So when they see people like jogging or maybe like walking around the park.
Oh, there's this.
And they're doing the Rocky one.
That's classic.
And I was just like, no, that's genuinely like really funny because
hilarious. That motivated me.
No,
I'll run faster if you do that.
Exactly. And I'd be like, imagine that. Like anytime you just went, you walk into, I don't know, like a business meeting or you're walking around London.
You got
a band behind you that can just appear out of nowhere and just play like motivational music. I was just like, that would be the dream.
You would be like taking over everything.
And I think based off of what you're saying, they've said that now on social media, videos that do the best are of babies and animals because people know that it's genuine. Because like dogs and cats don't really care about the camera and they're not doing it for the camera, and that young children are less likely to as well.
Yeah. Authenticity is so important. Yeah.
It's so true. But yeah, I think the next thing to go on to before we sort of come to the last segment is obviously this idea of like, and I think not only I think expanding wider than comedians, but also like comedy shows, films, etc. Like this idea of like localized humor, because I do agree that there's certain humor that is like anyone can relate to. So like it was kind of funny. Trevor Noah was talking about when he started out in comedy when he was I think he was in South Africa. Then he went over to Ireland to do like a comedy sketch, and he was just like, "Oh, I don't know if I should be making jokes about like apartheid and stuff. Like, I don't know if the audience will get it." And I don't remember the comedian, but this Irish comedian told him like, "No, like he was just like Trevor, like." The Irish have had it rough too. Like we can relate to it. We can relate to a bit of a struggle. He's just like, we might not get apartheid, but you're just like, hey, like if you're making jokes about certain things, like people in the audience will like it. So you're just like, okay, let me try it.
Hey, the British, eh?
And he was just like, yeah, no, this is. So when he did it and it went really well, he was just like, yeah, no, certain jokes do translate. But I think more so with TV shows rather than specific comedians' jokes not translating is like my brother and I were talking about it a while ago, like. The In-Betweeners, British show, worked really well in the UK, very funny. They tried to do it in America, didn't really work. But then there are shows that it clearly did work because they molded it to fit the audience. So The Office is a clear example. The one in the UK, I think only had maybe 2-3 seasons.
2 seasons in the UK,
In America, it had 9, did really well. Like a lot of the people in that show, it boosted their careers.
100%. And even like the pattern of it was then used for then Parks and Recreation, which then was then utilized for other shows.
There was like Parks and Rec, 30 Rock. Yeah. There was like a whole like slew of those shows that were like all hilarious. Like Parks and Rec also amazing comedy show.
Very funny.
And like I think with that, it's like very clear that like certain things can translate to like certain things like comedy sketches, comedy shows, comedy films can work with a different audience. I think the one that surprised me recently, actually, so in the UK on BBC iPlayer, actually they both are there, so if you want to watch either of them, you can. But there's this show called Ghosts, which is all about this person who she's essentially living in this house. There's loads of ghosts there. She inherited it from like a long distant relative that she didn't know that she was related to. She gets this big mansion in the country. Long story short, she almost dies. Because she almost died, she can now see the ghosts, like any ghost around her, she can now see. So it's all about how does she navigate what the specific ghost wants with also trying to make sure this house that's basically like falling apart and is very bad. How can she manage that as well as like her partner who doesn't know that the ghost at first doesn't know the ghosts exist, and then he finds out later on, but he can't necessarily see them. So it's all about like managing all of that, and it's quite funny. Like to me, it's really good. It's got a lot of like British humor in it, so it's very funny. You've got like different characters. So you've got like some Victorian characters. You've got a prehistoric like caveman. You've got the classical like I think 80s or 90s politician. Who I think was a part of the Conservative Party, so he makes a lot of jokes. You've got you've got like an archery instructor who's like most of the time is very chill, but does have his moments where he gets very stressed.
Are these all different ghosts?
Yeah, these are all different ghosts that live in the house. Okay. So all of them.
Wow, this house is.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, so they've all died. So all the ghosts that you see, they've all died on the grounds of like on the grounds that essentially the house is on. So she interacts with them the most, but she tries to not go anywhere else because she will see ghosts like anywhere. So like when she tried to move away from that big house because the ghosts were annoying her with so many requests, she literally, I think one of the places she found, she literally saw like a pilot who had died in World War II, who crashed into a tree. He died in the tree, and she was just stuck seeing, like the bed literally faced him. So she was just like, every morning she'd wake up to that. She was like, no. The interesting thing is they then did an American version of the show, and I haven't watched it, but when I heard about it, I was just like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work because there's a lot of things like...
British humor, American humor is slightly different.
It's slightly different. Yeah. But it seems
interesting.
Yeah, it seems like they like change. So a lot of the characters obviously like were changed to match American history and not just like British history. So like Victorians, not really there. They have a Native American person. They have a Viking as well. So I think rather than having like the caveman character who's like the dumb one of the group, they have a Viking instead. So yeah, they translate it well to like match to match American history. But I think that's like still going on. I think that's on its third season. The British one has ended. But yeah, I think also what helped with that is the people who wrote the British one acted in it, and I think like I don't know for definite, but I think they also wrote the American one. Yeah. So they were able to like translate it really well.
Yeah. Like I think the show that I would say did it the best is Shameless. You had Shameless UK, which was like an alright show, but then when I watched the American one, because of like the the levels of poverty in the United States compared to the UK, the projects, and then the welfare system in the United States, that it really did excel. And like, I think the way that they did it as well is they wrote it completely different 100%. From the UK. So it matched, because like the benefit system here is very different from the States. Definitely. And each specific state has their even different way that they handle it. But I think it just worked perfectly in the way that they handled it. And I think I even prefer the American version more than the British version.
Oh, wow. What a statement.
And then people be shocked, but I'd ask you to give it a try, and I think shows that do well, so you've got like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which has a really hilarious and cult following here. You've got like the American Office. I think some people who don't like it here are just a bit of haters, because that is a really, really good show.
It's hilarious.
And Parks and Recreation, you see that everyone loves those kind of shows because you can relate to it. It's like you always know that there's someone in the office that is like Dwight. You know that there's someone in your office who's like Hitchcock and Scully. And I think that's what gets people grounded in comedy, is like, I can relate to this. I can relate to those people. I can relate to that situation. And like, and I think that's the key thing with comedy, is having things that people can relate to. And I think that's why shows like Friends work so well, is because people can relate to it.
Relate to aspects of it, yeah. And I think it's like what you said, because there's a quote that actually you told me about by Rowan Atkinson, who plays Mr. Bean, and he was just like, life is a tragedy.
He said originally it was from Charlie Chaplin. Yeah.
So yeah, Charlie Chaplin said this quote, that life is a tragedy in close-up, but a comedy like when you look at it from far out.
Ooh, I really like that.
And he was basically saying that like in the moment, or when you're in it, you might be like, this is the worst thing ever, or like this is really hard. But then when you look out from it, or like you're out of that circumstance, you might look back on it and you'll be like, this is hilarious. This is so funny.
Not to take it in a serious direction, but I do think that laughter and comedy is probably like the best reaction to pain. Like if there's like emotional pain like going on, like finding a way to look at it in a funny way really does a lot for you. Like, I don't know, like it's such a great way to kind of diffuse like this is the worst thing, like this is so bad, whatever this thing is like, I'm only focused on that. And it's like, if you can make it funny for yourself in a little bit, in a way, like it takes your focus towards that, and then that makes you laugh, and then you get and then you get happy chemicals, and then you're like
100%.
You know, that gives you, that helps you, progress out of that deep pain, and I love comedy for that.
Yeah,
there's very few other things like that I've ever found.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the things you actually do see. You see it in TV shows, you see it in like real life. If someone's going through something, then having their mates around them, family members, boyfriend, girlfriend, their significant other, their children, who are able to then be like, oh, so perfect example. Imagine someone is doing a presentation in front of their bosses. They completely bomb the presentation. They're awful. And then they come back home. And then someone then says, oh, do you remember when I tried to do my presentation? And then you end up laughing and you're like, oh yeah. And then you then start to realize, to your point, like life continues on, and like actually, yeah, I was awful. And it's actually kind of funny that, because like even for me, like especially those times when you're in school and then you then mess up in front of everybody, and then you think your life is over because you've messed up in front of everyone. But then you look back at it now and you actually start laughing at it, because then you realize to what Charlie Chaplin said, and that's that it actually, in hindsight and also in like looking back from it, you actually realize it actually is quite funny.
And it's like almost, it's like not as big of a deal. It's like, it's like I can laugh at this. It's like this happened. It's okay. Is a different feeling than like, oh, like this happened. And it's like totally different worlds. And comedy is great for that. I love comedians for that.
And I think, like you were saying with shows, like that's why people love Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because it does have its like moments where it's serious or it gets kind of heavy, but then it'll find a way to like drop a joke in. And actually, funnily enough, I think linking to what you were saying, both of you were saying just then. So last week Friday, my friend and partner or co-host of the of Pick Up the Mic, Samuel took me, and so his girlfriend and him took me to watch this play called, I need to get the actual title because every time I say it, it is not correct, but it's called For All the Black Boys. Wait. All the Black Boys. For all the black boys who have considered suicide, when there's times when the internet just like. That's not the title, by the way. This is a really weird play title. No, it's literally just the internet. Just
they really made their pain comedy there. That's really amazing.
But yeah, the full title is For Black Boys Who Have Considered Suicide When the Hue Gets Too Heavy. And when I saw the title and like it's got like a 15 rating on their website, I was like 15 plus rating or age recommendation. Sorry, I was like, oh, this is gonna be like heavy.
Yeah.
And when my friend told me, I was just like, Samuel, I was like, I don't know, I'm a comedy guy. I don't really. But then I was just like, you know what? Let's go ahead. Like I was just like, I haven't been to the theater in ages. It sounds like it should be really good. And then, yeah, it's just like, I think kind of what you're saying about like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Rec, those shows, particularly like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think does it perfectly, is with the play as well. It had serious moments where it talks about like suicide, racism, racial discrimination, stereotypes, all of this stuff. But then it could just like drop, like, I don't know, it would be heavy or like it could get really heavy. But anytime it was getting super heavy, a joke would be made and it would draw you back and you'd be like, okay, this is kind of funny. And, everyone's just laughing.
And I think that's just a shout out to Seth Rogen with Family Guy. Like that is something, I think that art form he gets.
Seth MacFarlane.
Seth MacFarlane, yeah. That, what he gets within Family Guy, that he can take like a serious moment, then can get you to laugh about it and then say it in such a way that it is pretty political. And like just watching like old Family Guy episodes, I think one of the things that even when we were like teenage boys, like, and even like adults now, when someone says like an inappropriate word in a serious point in time, you just, and maybe it's the tension, you just burst out laughing and you just can't help it.
So good.
Yeah, but it's just like those moments where it's just like, I don't know, it's like what you said, like whether, I don't know, something super tense has happened or something's a bit awkward and then someone just like drops something funny. I think a funny story to share to that was, so me and my brother and my sister got on the bus once and it was like, in the evening we were going through Soho on like Trafalgar Square. On the bus is kind of packed. This guy walks on. So literally, he's got a shirt, a t-shirt, and he's just got his underwear on and his shoes. So he's not wearing any trousers. You can see his underwear. Gets up, he's come upstairs. He's walking down the like aisle bit. Everyone can see he's not wearing trousers. And it's funny because everyone's just looking around like, what's going on here? Like, this is kind of weird. The guy's kind of drunk, like he's stumbling a bit. So you're like, he's clearly drunk. And then he goes and sits down at the back. And it was funny because this black guy at the front of the bus just gets up, turns around, and he's just like, I'm so sorry, everyone, to disturb you. But are we all going to act like this guy didn't just walk on the bus with no trousers? And like everyone just burst out laughing. And he was like, mate, are you okay? Because like, where are your trousers at? And then, yeah, the guy was a bit drunk and he was just like, yeah, man, like, oh, it was a wild night. And I was just like, that just a few, because I think people are just like, oh, like, people are a bit nervous. People are like whispering.
Yeah, it's like, who's this crazy guy?
Yeah,
like, is he dangerous?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was just like the fact that he was just like, yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't just let this slide. We got to discuss this.
I want to be that guy's friend. That guy sounds awesome.
But yeah, it was just like, I feel like what you're saying, like that was an easy way to like diffuse a situation, make it funny. Even I'd say like, not
and again, just a different reaction.
Exactly.
Just a different take.
Yeah.
Like just a different take. It's the same thing. It's like you could easily have that reaction of like, I'm scared, this guy's crazy. Or you could be like, dude, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just that with comedy that like it's able to like you said, like serious moments, tense moments. It's just a way to like bring everything down. And I think one final thing before we name like our favorite films and wrap up is a great example of this in a film. I forgot it's Goodfellas, isn't it? The one with the
yes,
it's Goodfellas. So I've never watched it, but if you want to see the scene that I'm talking about, it's like I think it's so the what's funny clip. Like, just type in Goodfellas, what's funny, and basically this guy makes a joke. and he turns. So it's like, if you don't know the premise of Goodfellas, basically they're all in the mafia. They're in the mafia, right? Yeah, they're all in the mafia. So it's a joke, and this guy makes a joke, and he's just laughing. Everyone's laughing around the table. They're like, like laughing at the joke, and the guy's just like, "Oh, you're so funny, man. You're so funny." And then the guy who made the joke.
And the thing is, the guy who makes the joke has like a high pitched New York accent.
Okay,
So it's like
perfect.
So he's like, what do you mean I'm funny? What about me makes me funny? And then he just like drills into the guy, and then he's like, is he funny? Is he funny? What do you mean I'm funny? Like about to get into a fight, and he's like, gotcha.
And I was just like, yeah, that's a perfect way to like show how quickly comedy can like how you can use tension in an effective way. And I think, definitely the final point on this would be like, so I used to do drama for GCSE and A-level, and one of the key things that like I took from that is comedies are really good at like, no, it was actually Jordan Peele that said it. So Jordan Peele said that what makes a comedy and a horror film is sometimes the pacing and sometimes the music. So he was saying like, Get Out could have been a comedy film based on the sounds and like the pacing of the film. He said, I could have easily turned that into a comedy film. The whole message could be the same. Like I wouldn't need to shoot anything differently. I've got the same film. I just need to use different sound effects, use different music at certain points. And this film is now suddenly a comedy. And he was just saying, because I think the question was around like, a lot of people say like, oh, you know, you started out in comedy, you're now directing like a lot of horror things. And we're not saying that they're not good, but you know, some people think you've left comedy behind. And he was like, no, I haven't. Like, I'm just like, I'm making comedies, but you know, it's just the pacing, the music, the sound that's changing the delivery.
Wild. It's just a different way of like managing the tension. Like,
because like you can just look at like the first two like scary movies. Those films, they basically take the cliches from the horror films and then just change it just even so slightly that it then becomes a comedy because you're like, nah, actually this is actually quite funny.
And even like you mentioned, like with Hot Fuzz is like hilarious because it takes all these tropes from like, especially like, and that's what I was saying with like British humor, like it takes all these tropes from, you know, these outside of London in the middle of the countryside murder mystery like TV shows and films, and it's just like, yeah, we're going to take all the tropes, all the funny things that like people think actually, you know, if loads of people are getting murdered in a village, it is a bit of a concern, and people would genuinely like, you know,
because
that's a bit of a concern.
It could be a straight up like Wicker Man type film where a community has killed like
a little bit of a concern.
20 to 30 people and you then see like at the later part of the film that it just goes endless the amount of people they've killed. But it's like the way that they've able to then spin it to just make it so hilarious. Like when he was talking like, well, why they killed someone, he's like, yeah, because of his bushy beard. Like it first started off like, oh yeah, he because of him we got a bad rating and no one wants to come to our town. To then go down to we didn't like the way she spoke, we didn't like her accent, we didn't like his beard. Oh, she never cut the grass properly. So you then like say what?
And I think like to link to that, the funny thing with the film was they made it seem like, oh, there was like this whole development plot, and it was because, you know, this guy wanted to build new developments, and these were key people in the community that didn't want the village to change, and they were just like, no, like we just wanted to keep our rating of the village, like we get voted best village of the year, and we want to keep it, and you know, certain people we didn't like, they weren't on board with what we were doing, and I was just like, you know what? That's a good way to like build up that tension, make it seem like there's like this convoluted, like thick plot when actually it's just, we just don't like certain people. That's it. We just don't like them. But yeah, to end on the last thing, the question is, what is your comedy? You know, let's do comedy, film, and TV show. So we can give the audience, so we're giving them podcasts to go and research, but audience at home, we're going to give you a comedy film recommendation and a comedy TV show recommendation. So yeah, over to you guys. Whoever wants to go first, the floor's yours.
Oh, thank you. I would say for film would have to be Hot Fuzz. I think just the way that they're able to then to also take the old people element of it. The people committing these crimes are old people and elders in the. And I think I can never get over the scene with the priest where Simon Pegg comes around with like a shotgun and it's like, oh, and the priest is like, oh, you might not be a man of God, but you must be a man of peace. And he said, and then he replies like, oh, you might, at times there's a time for peace, but there's also the time for violence. And then the priest is like, oh, fuck off, grasshopper. And brings out like 2 guns and then tries to shoot him. And I think the way that they do it is that they always shoot them like in a way that's non-lethal. Yeah. And like they shoot the priest. I think they shoot him in the leg, and he's like Jesus Christ as he goes down. And it's just
man, need to watch.
Like you would never expect a priest to be like, fuck off. And it's like, it's so hilarious. And I think that would be my favorite film. I would say my favorite TV series would be Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I think good choice. I think the reason I really like it, because there's always a point with certain shows, like they get to like their zenith, their height of funny, but then it's like they can't continue it. But then I think with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think possibly also because they had like a break due to for the pandemic, and also they moved from being on Fox to then move to Universal, so they took another break, so they were able to then like further the writing. And then the fact that the more and more you watch the show, the more and more you fell in love with the different characters. And I think people found that they like Jake Peralta, they like the Captain Holt, and rest in peace to the actor who plays him. And the fact that a lot of people like Charles Boyle, like it's just his ridiculousness, and like at times of seriousness he would just come up with the weird stuff. And then I just remember watching like last week a compilation of all the stuff like Hitchcock and Scully had done, and it's just hilarious like how amount of stuff they get away with. So I would say that those two are my favorite.
Perfect. Over to you, Sean.
Oh man, I mean, I think favorite comedy film might have to be Superbad. I think Superbad. It's just so classic, and it's like it's Seth Rogen. It's everyone. Everyone can relate. You're going to high school party. You're getting drunk. Like all the shenanigans that happen. I mean, it's so well written.
Yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off. Like the Muhammad McLovin.
Yeah, dude. Oh man, it's so good.
He's like, oh yeah, I picked it because it's the most popular name in the world.
You guys are dying. Oh, dude. I mean, it's really good. Yeah. Oh man, the cops, Bill Hader and Seth Rogen as the cops are unreal. Yeah, comedy show. I'm gonna go with Parks and Rec.
Good choice.
I'm gonna go with Parks and Rec. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a really good one. I think for me, film. I said it before. I'll say it again. Rush Hour. I'd say the first one over the second one because we watched it yesterday. There's a funny bit when Jackie Chan's character takes Chris Tucker's character to get Chinese food in America, in LA, and it's funny because Chris Tucker gets like the Chinese food, and he's just like, what's all this greasy shit? Like, what's going on here? Like, and then the guy's just like, the guy runs the shop and just like, so he's Chinese, and he's just like, I'm not giving you soul food. I'm giving you.
He basically says, Chinese food.
Yeah, this is Chinese food. No soul food.
And then Chris Tucker's like, I didn't say anything about soul food. I just didn't want a box of shit and a box of grease. And he's like, and he's walking off, and the guy's like, I ain't no punk bitch.
It's just there's one-liners in the film that I don't know, no matter how many times you watch it, you're just like, it's just like the so funny good, timing.
Dude, I think it was Rush Hour 3 where Chris Tucker is the traffic cop.
Oh yeah.
Yes, dude, what a way to open the movie, dude.
Yes.
But yeah, I think for show, Drove is a tough one because both the ones you mentioned were really good. I think. Now I'm trying to think of
so many.
Yeah,
so many good
so
ones.
many good ones. If I have the first one that comes into my head, and actually, I can't believe I was about to not say this in this whole episode of Comedians. This one has a Brunel alumni in it, but funnily enough, the principal from In-Betweeners.
I haven't seen the
You haven't
In-Betweeners.
seen
I'm
it?
not a good.
No.
I'm not a good target audience.
But yeah, the principal for the In-Betweeners and this comedian called Joe Brown, they went to Brunel.
Wow.
And I only found out because so when I graduated from my undergraduate, it was an online graduation, and they wanted it to still feel like inclusive and fun. So they asked, so this person who leads this TV show. Actually, you know what? I will say, Okay, I've got my answer. So the TV show. So yeah, let me link it. The person I was going to say is Lee Mack. So Lee Mack, also a comedian, but he has his own TV show called Not Going Out, which was the one I was going to recommend. But Lee Mack went to Brunel. So did the guy who's the principal from the In-Betweeners and Joe Brown. So they had like a nice speech at the graduation. The show that I would say, it's not like a written show, which I guess is like a cop-out based on both of your guys' answers. But it's Would I Lie to You? And the whole premise of the show is, it's basically an improvisation show. So Lee Mack, I forgot, do you know what the other guy's called?
David Mitchell.
David Mitchell. Do you know I don't know the guy that hosts it, what his name is.
Oh, Rob Brydon, I believe.
Okay. But the three of them are like the reoccurring people that are there every season. And essentially it's like they bring on like and the thing is, it's not just comedians. So it's comedians, like news presenters, athletes, like they bring on everyone and anyone, even fellow presenters like on the BBC. And then it's funny because basically the way it works is you get given a card. So you like, if it's your turn, a card is given to you. You literally pick it up and you have to basically read out what's on the card and you have to create a story. So like if we were doing it here, I might have a card and it might say, on my 12th birthday, I didn't like my present. So one of my friends gave me, so I punched him in the face. And I'd have to read it out, and you guys would have to you'd ask me questions, you'd kind of interrogate me, and then after a couple of minutes, you would then have to determine whether what I'm saying is true or a lie. The really funny thing about it is this person that was on it, he was saying the whole they do research with you and ask you loads of questions about your story before you're even on the episode. So the show is completely improvisation. You have no idea what the card says until you see it. So it gets really funny when like people are coming up with all these extravagant stories, and it's especially with comedians, it's very hard because obviously comedians work with improvisation. So some of them will make up this like crazy story of like how they met another celebrity and then like tripped and then fell in front of them and was super embarrassed. Or maybe they, gave their child was sick one day, so they pretended like to put their twin at school to take the register or whatever, like stuff like that. And you're then left thinking, it is ridiculous, but is it could this really happen? And then it gets really funny because they then do like a whole thing of, they'll bring on a person and say like, they'll either bring on a person or like give them a prop. So the person will then have to say, this is Edward. Edward is my next door neighbor. And when Edward was upset about the way my hedge was looking, he then came over, chopped down on my hedge, and wrote a formal letter to the council complaining. And then it's really funny because the person who's like brought on as a guest that knows one of the three people who's on the panel, you have to kind of like judge and see like based on his reactions and like the stories people are making up about Edward, like, is Edward really, like, do they know each other? Is he laughing because he's remembering the story and is finding it funny? Or is he saying like, wow, I can't believe this person just made up this crazy story about me. So yeah, Would I Lie to You? I definitely recommend it because it's just like very funny and very ridiculous. There was even one which turned out to be true. I've forgotten what the comedian's name is, but he's blind and he basically was saying that he had a neighbor. So the card that he got was, I was annoyed with something along the lines of, I was annoyed with my neighbor because I greeted him hi, I said hi to him, he didn't respond, and I was really upset with him. But then it turned out later he was actually deaf. So when he couldn't hear me speak, essentially. So it was just really funny because people were asking him like, okay, so tell us about the story. And he was just like, yeah, he was my downstairs neighbor, and like I live here, and then we have another neighbor on top. And essentially when he came into when he moved in, I was outside and I said like, hi, how nice to meet you. And then it's funny because one of the people that was interrogating him was just like, oh, so how did you say hi? Was it like this, like hi? And then the guy was just like, well, I wouldn't know because I'm blind. I don't. He was just like, literally, I don't know how you're. Like, it was just like, I can't see anything here, and it was just like, it was just making everyone laugh, and it was just like the ridiculousness of like the show is what really makes it really good, and it's just I would recommend. There's loads of clips on YouTube. You can watch on BBC iPlayer, like the most recent seasons. But
I'm wondering, have they ever got you? Like, have you like, has someone like said a story that's fake, and you're like, this is true? Like,
oh yes, like they're like comedians as well, especially the ones that have been on. It's funny because the guys that have been on the show the longest, Dave Mitchell and Lee Mack. I guess if you're an avid,
Mitchell.
Yeah. So if you're an avid like watcher of the show, you would get to know like things that they've said, it was a lie or it was true. So sometimes people are like, my sister who's watched it a lot, she was just like, I know I've seen it for a long time, but I couldn't tell you. Like,
wow, they must be really good.
But yeah. So I think, to be honest, like I've told my...
It's kind of scary, actually.
It is. Like, I told my
someone
brother,
can be lying that convincingly.
That convincingly. And some of them, like, especially, I think... both for particularly like elderly people that go on and do it, they do the whole like innocent act of like, so like some of them do the classic like, like they might be like, you said you forgot to, give this person something and then they got upset with you and like hated you forever and that's why you've got a big rivalry. Like, why, what day of the week was that? Or what were you doing? And they were just like, look, I barely remember what I did like this morning, let alone like what I did 20 years ago.
You gotta, give it up for them. Yeah. Like, it's okay. Like, you're old. Like, it's,
Some of them just use that to be like, so
smart.
Yeah.
So crafty.
And then they'll turn around and be like, oh yeah, it was actually a lie. And you'd be like, you got me. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you have anyone who's not watched it, please do watch Would I Lie to You. It's a good one.
Got me.
But yeah, I think we'll look into it. Maybe we'll figure out how we can do it on the podcast or on one of the podcasts. Have a Would I Lie to You like episode, or maybe we'll do like a live thing. We'll look into it. I've been thinking about it, but it would be good. But yeah, we've come to the end of today's episode.
You didn't tell us your film.
Oh yeah, I did. Rush Hour.
Oh, Rush Hour.
Rush Hour, yeah. But yeah, Rush Hour, film, and Would I Lie to You TV show. Both make me laugh a lot, so definitely recommend. But yeah, we've come to the end. Thank you both, Sean and Josh, for coming on today. As always, honestly, man, we've been planning this for ages. I will say, like, we've been putting this on, Sean knows, we've been putting this on work for ages, so I'm glad we were able to record it. Before we let you guys go, could you let us know, one, how to find you guys, but also, linking it back to the businesses, putting serious caps back on. What if you guys have anything coming up? If you've got, like Joshua was mentioning about upcoming episodes for the Two Maesters, if you guys have any big projects or big updates you want to like tell people to keep an eye out, as well as like your Instagram or social media handles, please do let us know. So yeah, we'll start with Sean.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I am doing a crowdfunding campaign. The product's gonna launch later this year, so don't worry about it. That's gonna be in September. But if you go to www.moreconnection.co, you can learn everything that you want about the product, like why it's good for mental health, and that's gonna be updated regularly. And you can subscribe to the newsletter there. You can even reserve your own device to get a discount. Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest place to go.
Perfect. And what about you, Josh?
So we do have an episode coming out this week about Shogun. We're going to be going back into the second part of the series as well. Looking forward to that. And also hopefully going to Comic-Con as well. The May Comic-Con. Cool. Yes, will be the end of May, which will be wonderful to see. Hopefully see some of you fans there as well.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, thank you to you, our wonderful audience, for coming back for another episode. If you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated. If you want to make sure when other episodes under the Pick Up the Mic YouTube channel are coming out, make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. And finally, if you're interested in receiving some perks, getting access, as you can see, to some merch, we are working on merch for the different channels as well. So I'll get into the different channels that we've got, but please make sure that you are either a Patreon member or a YouTube channel member. Links are down below. If you are interested in learning a bit more about that and what you can get, please do click on the links there. We promise both Patreon and YouTube channel membership is not too expensive. So we understand cost of living, but definitely make sure you check it out. And finally, before we wrap things up, as I mentioned, we have 3 other YouTube channels. So we have, as you now know, the Two Maesters YouTube channel that you definitely should check out if you're interested in learning about sci-fi and fantasy. They will have their merch coming soon. We have the Senseis of Anime YouTube channel, where we have just designed, and we will be posting pictures about it, hopefully by the time this episode's out. Our Senseis of Anime tops that you can wear bright and nice at Comic-Con, showcasing that you are a sensei of anime. So yeah, if you're interested in anime, the world of anime, cosplay,
Very
all of those
cool.
things.
I
Yeah.
already want one.
You ready?
To be honest
See, look,
with you.
we got our first customer right here.
Let's go. I'm in, dude.
If you're interested in that, please, then check out the channel, but also check out the merch. We're just working on putting the store out, so the store should hopefully go out before the end of the month. And then finally, if you are interested in learning about the world of gaming, again, working on merch at the moment, but if you're interested in learning about the world of gaming, connecting with gamers, talking about favorite games, even I know we discussed it when we did the last episode, we will start to be live streaming games. Then please do check out all of those channels. But yeah, that's a bye from us here. We're gonna end today's episode of Mic Unplugged, and we'll see you next time when we discuss another fun topic with another set of amazing guest speakers. So that's a bye from us here. Have a wonderful day. Speak to you soon, and enjoy yourselves.
See you, folks.